Hello guys, the Maniac Zach here, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Knockout Reviews. Today's episode is going to be a little interesting to say the least. You see, I recently got this in the mail with a strange letter inside. I don't know who it's from, but apparently someone wants me to review these 6 games from the Wii series. I'm excited because I used to play these games back in the day, so I thought that by looking at them, it would be a nice trip down memory lane. Now, unlike all the other episodes in the series, I'll be doing a mini review for each of these Wii series games instead of a highly detailed one. If I did that, then this video would be way longer than it needs to. So instead of giving a single score for each of the 6 games, I'll be rating the entire series as a whole at the end of part 2 of this episode. Anyways, these are some of the highest selling games of all time, with Wii Sports in particular selling over 80 million copies. But even with that, this series has been around for over a decade, and my gaming tastes have changed drastically since then. Was the Wii series just a fad that has faded away, or does it still have some enjoyment out of it? Let's find out. Despite being bundled with the Wii Sports doesn't really have that much in terms of content. Yet despite that, it has the perfect amount of replay value that satisfies me every time I come back to it. Not many other games have that same luxury. Usually, having a small amount of content alone is not enough to want to keep playing that game. Whether you are playing alone with CPUs or multiple people, almost every sport is enjoyable and a blast to play through. Now, the keyword here is almost, and I'm going to explain that more once I get into detail with the actual sports themselves, which I shall do. First up in the Wii Sports lineup is tennis. This is a solid sport and one of my favorites to choose from, especially when playing with someone else. However, it's not as enjoyable as I remember it to be. While it is satisfying to swing the tennis racket and hit the ball, returning the serve is awkward. There were times where I swear I swung my Wii remote correctly, but the timing of that swing in the game itself was delayed. The usage of the motion controls is one of the better ones out of the 5 sports, but because of the hiccups of the late 2000s motion controls technology, it's not as effective as it would be today. But probably was the most frustrating thing about tennis in Wii Sports is how inconsistent the fastball is. You really don't get taught how to do it, and going to the instruction manual of the game doesn't help either. Sometimes I think I've got it, but other times when I do it the exact same way, it doesn't happen. I know it's not that big of a deal, but that proves the limitations of the motion controls for the Wii itself. On the flip side, it is nice that there are options for sets, so you can choose how long of a tennis match you want to play. Next up, there is baseball. Like tennis, this is another solid sport, and it's just enjoyable to play today as it was back in 2006. But no matter how good you are at the game itself, it is the longest to play through. But yet, only having 3 innings to play a match in is shorter than it should have been. Yes, I know that Wii Sports is meant to be a more pick-up-and-play experience, where it's more about playing multiple games in a short amount of time, but it would have been nice if you could choose higher amounts of innings so you could have a more traditional baseball game. Besides that, it's cool they implemented the different types of pitches by pressing different buttons on the Wii remote before swing. It adds some depth that really isn't seen anywhere else in this game, which is appreciated since I'm coming back to a game with motion controls after 10 years of playing games without them. Yet, there's no point in the game that teaches you these things, no. They're actually in the instruction manual. It's startling to think that this game was still at a time before there are well-developed and massive tutorials put into them, especially since it came out almost 12 years ago. Dang, we've gone that far in game design, huh? Anyways, one thing I've always appreciated about Wii Sports Baseball is its simplicity. You can't really control your team in the outfield or on the bases, and I prefer it that way. It's a perfect example of how Nintendo designed Wii Sports to be accessible for people all over the gaming spectrum, and I respect them for that. After that, there's bowling, and this is my favorite out of all the 5 sports, including this game. Without this, I would enjoy bowling in real life, even if I'm not that great at it. One of the best moments in gaming for me is the satisfaction I get from having only a few pins left and getting that perfect spare. With its minimal use of motion controls and addictive gameplay, bowling in Wii Sports is flawless. Just like in real bowling, it's really difficult to get that perfect shot for a strike, but when that happens, it is awesome. Not only that, but this is the only sport to have background music while you're playing. It doesn't really change anything, at least that's what I thought when I was younger. But as an adult and a lover of video game music, I really appreciate it. One of the most fun things to do in all of Wii Sports comes from purposely throwing the ball behind me, especially if I'm playing this with other people. Other than that, I don't have much else to say. Second to last, there is golf. As much as I don't care for the sport in real life, I enjoy the Wii Sports version of it. With a total of 9 courses separated between the 3 difficulty modes, this sport has the most content packed into it out of all the ones in this game. Now, when I first played Wii Sports, I didn't care too much about golf, but going back to it now after all these years, it's actually pretty fun. The only real flaw that I see with golf is that sometimes it is finicky when it comes to making shots, especially when you're putting it into the hole and want to hit it at just the right speed. But compared to the awkwardness of tennis, it's tolerable since this is a slow-paced game to play where you don't need to move around the Wii remote so much. Last but not least, there's boxing, and this is my least favorite sport in this game. Unlike the other ones, it requires a nunchuck to play, making it more inaccessible than the rest of the sports. Going back to it now after barely playing it when I was younger, it's honestly disappointing. More than anything, boxing was the Hardcore Games' mascot to show people that motion controls were just the Wii's gimmick and not much else. Even as someone who loves motion controls, their implementation of boxing was executed horribly. It just feels really awkward to play, especially when I need to move my whole body to perform certain shots. So why did Nintendo choose boxing instead of a better sport that could appeal to the rest of the world, like soccer? Now before I wrap up this review, I just want to say a couple of miscellaneous things that I noticed while playing Wii Sports again. First, I noticed that the graphics have aged more poorly than I remember, especially since I'm playing this on a Wii U, where it upscales the original resolution of the Wii 480p to 1080p. Some stuff is also very alias, such as in the crowd for boxing. Also, there is a training mode that adds a fun twist to the standard sports, such as getting as many home runs as possible in baseball. Since these minigames help you get better at the sports and face tougher opponents, this reinforces a high replay value. Finally, the music in Wii Sports is some of the most uplifting and underrated that Nintendo has ever created. I know that there is the iconic title screen theme, but there are so many jingles and tunes that play that are really enjoyable to listen to. It just goes to show the level of passion Nintendo puts into their projects. Most game companies that create casual games like this would not put as much of their heart into it. That's why shovel games are just so bland and forgettable. Overall, the high replay value and accessibility were really nailed in Wii Sports, and that's why it's one of my favorite games of all time. While it has shown its age slightly with its hit-or-miss motion controls, it holds up significantly more than the hundreds of other titles that were released on the Wii. Not only that, but Wii Sports is the embodiment of the 7th console generation, which cannot be recreated in the modern game industry. Nowadays, game companies will no longer have as huge of a focus on the casual audience as they did in the last decade. That era is long gone, for better or for worse. Now that we're done with that, let's take a look at the next game in the series, Wii Play. This came out a year after Wii Sports was released, and back then I found it to be underwhelming. But does that still hold true? Let's take a look. Like I did for Wii Sports, this review will mainly focus on the individual minigames themselves. With that said, let's take a look at Shooting Range. Basically, you just point and shoot the targets, which thankfully change between each level. You start off by shooting at simple balloons, then ducks, and all of a sudden you're shooting at soda cans, keeping them in the air. Shooting Range seems like a spiritual successor to Duck Hunt on the NES, especially since it takes place outdoors in a similar grassy area, and that is greatly appreciated. Since Nintendo focused on making the Wii series accessible since motion controls were still new technology back in the day, its low difficulty works well. This simplicity reminds me why I keep coming back to light gun games at the arcade. I would say this is one of my favorite minigames, including Wii Play. Next up, there is Find Me, and this is the strangest choice for a minigame in my opinion. You have to search for a specific Mii among a crowd of other Miis. Obviously, as you move on to higher levels, it gets more difficult and the tasks change. At first, you're just finding two identical Miis, but then you're looking for Miis that are looking in the wrong direction in a crowd. I couldn't figure that task out until after I was working on the review itself. The increasing difficulty with the objective changes makes me want to progress further besides just getting a high score. However, I just wish something else replaced Find Me, like foosball, because it doesn't feel like a game to me. As for table tennis, this is a solid choice for a minigame to be included, at least in theory. I say that because of how flawed it actually is. I just have to slightly move the Wii remote to hit the ball, making it a massive downgrade compared to tennis from Wii Sports. It feels so tacked on, it doesn't feel like you need to put an effort to play the game. Yes, minimal usage of motion controls in these games can work, but this is flat out laziness. Movements to keep the rally going are jerky and aren't as smooth as I would have liked, so it's difficult to get a long rally going. What's even worse is that you only see the hand of your character instead of your playable Mii itself. There are other Miis watching you while the central focus of the gameplay is just two hands with paddles and a ball. It's a departure from the traditional viewing angle from the rest of the minigames. This first-person and third-person hybrid isn't really appealing to me, even if it's only seen in this minigame. Overall, this is one of the weakest minigames WePlay offers. Then, there is Pose Me, where you have to match your Mii to fit into bubbles with specifically shaped outlines on them. It's extremely easy at first, but once you get to the later levels, you have to constantly switch poses. This difficulty progression was actually nice, and it made it feel like a challenge at some points. You want to make sure you pop the bubble before it goes through the electricity, otherwise everything just slows down. If you pop a total of 3 bubbles throughout the game, then it's over. It would have been nice if there are more poses to switch to as you progress through the levels. Not only that, but it would have been nice to switch between poses quicker. For example, if the pose selected is on the bottom, you have to press the A button twice if you need to select the top one. You know how most games, when you select an item on a list, if you press down on the very bottom item, you can go to the top? Incorporating something like that would have made the game flow more smoothly and be less aggravating. If you're tired of playing as your Mii all the time and want something else, no worries, because there is laser hockey. It's literally air hockey, but with a more vibrant aesthetic. However, unlike in regular air hockey, you can't move your pusher past your own side of the table. It makes it more frustrating to get the puck into the opponent's goal than it should be. Also, because of the different shapes of the pushers in laser hockey, you tilt the Wii remote to rotate yours. I would have preferred if Nintendo went with the traditional pusher design, because it feels awkward to rotate the Wii remote while also moving it across the screen. Finally, the 2-minute time limit is way too short. I'm surprised that there is no option to go up to 5 or even 10 minutes, or having an option to go up to a certain amount of points without a time limit like in Call of Duty multiplayer. But if you want something to make your blood boil with its mediocrity, there is Billiards, also known as pool. The real-life equivalent of it is actually really enjoyable, especially with multiple people, but here it's just average, mainly because of how you move the pole to hit the ball. You have to hold the B button, pull back the Wii remote, and jab it forward, all while aiming at the screen. It's very touchy, and sometimes I have to repeat the motion because it didn't register. Also, when you put the cue ball back on the table after you get a foul shot, you have to be really precise with it. Other than that, after playing this once for the review, I never want to touch this again because it isn't fun at all. Do you want to relax for a moment without taking Wii Play out of the console? Well, fishing has you covered. I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would, since I prefer fishing in video games such as in Animal Crossing. Here, you need to get as many fish as you can before the time runs out, and when you do, reeling them in from your rod for points is so satisfying. Like the shooting range, the minimal use of motion controls actually works in favor for this game, besides a couple times where I had to reach out far with the Wii remote. Also, the first-person angle from table tennis is back, but here it makes sense to be included. Having the normal third-person angle with your Mii using the rod would have made it less intuitive, so I'm glad that Nintendo didn't use it. Other than some of the fish designs being a little lacking, this is pretty solid and one of the best games that WePlay offers. Oh man, I want to ride on a cow, but Texas is so far away. Good thing Charge has me covered. Here, you're riding a cow, hunting down scarecrows on a set track, and you need to get as many as you can before you reach the goal. The premise alone has that strange yet appealing Nintendo vibe, and I honestly like it quite a bit. It's far from perfect, especially with how awkward it can be to get the angle you want with how you're tilting the Wii remote. but it forces Wii Play's goal of being a simple minigames collection rather than a bunch of serious sports titles. I just wish there were more levels like some of the other games in this collection, or at least different courses. Then, it wouldn't be so repetitive to go back and play through it. Finally, there is Tanks, which is my favorite out of the 9 games included with Wii Play. This is a twin-stick shooter, and thankfully you can use the nunchuck to make up for the Wii Remote's lack of a second analog stick. But if you don't have one, Tanks is still playable, but it's uncomfortable to use the D-pad to move and point at the screen to aim. This one has multiple levels to go through as well, giving me a reason to go back and get a better score. Speaking of which, performing well enough in these minigames gets you medals, which are sadly useless. It would have been nice if the medals added more to the game, like unlocking new minigames or at least expanding the existing ones. After playing through and unlocking all of the minigames, the game congratulates you for being a Wii Remote Master. Okay, I've been playing the Wii for over 10 years, but I wouldn't consider myself that good at playing these games. Overall, while Wii Play is more fun than I remember, it's forgettable and lacking, especially compared to the smash hit that was Wii Sports. It just seems that Nintendo tried to strike lightning twice by copying the same formula for Wii Sports and slightly altering it. In Wii Sports, even though there were only 5 games, at least they had a lot of content and something to enjoy out of them, but here, it's a horribly mixed bag. Out of all the 9 minigames that were included, I only had fun with about 3 of them. I appreciate the variety of these games, don't get me wrong, but the execution of the motion controls was adequate at best. This just feels like a tech demo made to show off the capabilities of the Wii Remote, which makes sense considering it was exactly that when it got shown off at E3 2006. So in that case, why wasn't this bundled with the console alongside Wii Sports? Then I'll at least forgive it for being so shallow. 2 down, 4 to go. Let's jump straight into what kicked a brief movement of exercising with video games. Wii Fit. Wii Fit is a departure from the rest of the Wii series, with it focusing more on improving your body through fitness rather than simply playing games with the Wii Remote. This gave the game a broader appeal than the previous 2 games that I covered, and I like that. It reinforces the casual demographic that Nintendo mainly focused on during the Wii and DS era. Not only that, but as an example of one of the most important reasons people love and hate Nintendo: their experimentation. For better or for worse, Nintendo always likes to think outside of the box more than any other game company, such as Mario + Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and I respect them for that. There are 4 modes that train and improve different parts of your body. There's Yoga, which relaxes and stretches out your muscles, Strength Training for strengthening different muscle groups, Aerobics, which uses rhythmic exercises for improving the heart and lungs, and finally Balance, for working on the stability of your body. All of these modes do the described job extremely well, and I surprisingly got a workout after I was playing through them. However, I prefer the Balance and Aerobic modes more for their fantastic minigames. All of them are a blast to constantly come back to, especially with how your performance is ranked from 1 to 4 stars. Now this is how you do replay value, my friends. Having an extra way of feedback besides the traditional high score really makes a difference. But besides that, they give me more intense workouts compared to the yoga and strength training exercises, making them more valuable to play. Sadly, 10 years later, I still cannot pass that stupid hula hoop minigame. I guess gotta get in shape soon, huh? Anyways, the yoga and strength training modes are slower paced and much better for warming up in the beginning of play sessions. However, I noticed that they put more of a strain on my muscles, so I wouldn't recommend playing Wii Fit if you're sore like I was when I recorded footage of it. Damn, I have a migraine. No worries, I can pull through this, I think. With that out of the way, I just noticed the biggest flaw of this game. It's inaccuracy. Not just with the minigames themselves, but with how Wii Balance Board scans your body. I know the technology was still primitive since this accessory predated the Kinect by a couple years, but I feel like Nintendo could have done better. You know, I'm only halfway through this series, and I'm starting to notice that as I move forward, every game slowly gets worse.